Peoria Riverfront and Grandview Drive. Right here we have the Spirit of Peoria, which is a fully functional paddle boat. And a lot of paddle boats along the Illinois-Mississippi River do not have this functional paddle boat right here, and they just have it for aesthetic purposes. But here is a historically accurate paddle boat that you can actually go visit yourself in Peoria, which I think is pretty neat. And it's just really pretty if you want to have a little day trip. So moving along, this is the Peoria Riverfront Museum, and sadly we won't be able to visit inside, but I can give you a lot of the content and a quick kind of summary. So here we have canyons that are forged over from 1.8 million years ago to about 1600 years ago, or 16,000 years ago, excuse me, and they water from the lake glaciers around Lake Michigan came and formed these really beautiful glacial rock formation patterns that look kind of like canyons along the Illinois River. So back in the day, woodland and Mississippi natives lived along what now would be Peoria. Peoria is actually the longest continuous settlement in Illinois. Speaking of which, for around 130 years, the pre-America, the French occupied what is now Peoria, and this is an example of one of their forts. These are some photos of Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln used these flatboats to travel down the Illinois to the Mississippi and then to trade goods in New Orleans. Here we have, again, you'll see those rock formations, those rock formations that look like canyons. You'll find them a lot more in northern Illinois than you will in southern Illinois. So here's the little flatboat, and maybe that's Abraham Lincoln right there. And this would have happened between 1828 and 1831. That is when Abe was taking those voyages, and it would have been a really young Abe Lincoln. Moving along, fast forwarding to the 1840s, you have these early barges. And a lot of these barges would have, mussels and other kinds of goods, corn, any kind of agricultural, even animals, down the Illinois, down the Mississippi to New Orleans to trade with the world. Here we can see by 1865, barges are now steam-powered, and you have the rise of steam-powered boats. Right here is a pretty famous boat. It's the Columbia. It's the biggest tragedy that's happened on the Illinois River. There were 500 people on board with 86 casualties. Here's a really cute little steamboat. I really like that paddle boat. And then these right here, you can see this is where the people get off and on, and where they would have the goods off and on. You can see it here too, and here. Here's the modern barges that we have to bring goods all the way from northern to New Orleans, or northern Illinois, and they're much bigger. And something I think is really interesting is I've gone fishing on the Illinois River, and they always follow just like a very predictable pattern, and I just was very curious as why. And I found this C-SPAN video talking about how
shipping canal. It's 9 feet deep.
There's a 9-foot deep shipping canal, and it's basically like a highway, an underground highway made by the U.S. Engineering Corps, and every once in a while they re-dredge it out and maintain it. Moving right along, we have Grandview Drive, and Grandview Drive is a scenic drive became really popular in the early 1900s. Um, President Roosevelt came and visited the drive, so this is what it would have looked like in his day, and this is the little car he may have sat in, and he said it was the world's most beautiful drive, which high praise, high compliment. And you would have seen these massive houses along the drive, which you can still see, and you can have the beautiful river. So here's some aerial shots of it. That's the drive right there. Here we have a street view. And here, this is the Soderstrom Castle, and it's a really pretty but odd looking castle and or house, and it was made when when this woman traveled abroad and her family knew how much she liked castles and surprised her with this big house when her and her new husband came back from their trip to Europe. So this is the parents who are actually the neighbors. This is where they would have lived. Something of note is a lot of these families along the road became so rich because they were in the whiskey business, and Peoria was the whiskey capital of the world because they had aquifers and corn, and they had in the 1940s and beyond, they had Irish and German immigrants who would brew alcohol, and they brought this knowledge with them after coming from New Orleans up to Peoria and settling, and then up to Chicago. And that concludes our tour of um, the Grandview Drive and the Peoria Riverfront. So thank you so much.